All right, welcome to the Voices of Wall Street. I am here with a very special guest today. We have none other than Michael Auerbach. He is the chairman of the parent company. For those of you who don't know, the parent company is a brand new cannabis SPAC hitting the markets, the product of the largest cannabis SPAC in history, plenty of fresh capital, star-studded investor roster, including Jay-Z, and the company is looking to become a dominant player in the marijuana business. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us on Voice of Wall Street.
Well, thank you, Dion, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, look, I got a lot of questions. This space, you're in the SPACs, you're in cannabis. Talk to me a little bit about, first of all, what the parent company is and how it's positioned to, win this, what's starting to become an increasingly crowded cannabis market.
So the parent company is the birth of a recent SPAC transaction. I founded one of the SPACs called Subversive Acquisition Corp, and we merged two assets together in California, Caliva and Left Coast Ventures, to create the largest vertically integrated platform in the state, the largest omni-channel platform in the state. We brought on Jay-Z as our chief visionary officer with a responsibility to build out that house of brands for us. The first Jay-Z brand is Monogram, which launched last month to great fanfare in California, as well as we signed an exclusive agreement with Roc Nation, providing us exclusive access to all of their artists and athletes. We intend to launch additional brands with that talent over the coming months.
Okay, and obviously Jay-Z's a big name. He doesn't just sign with anybody. But why does Jay-Z want to work with you, and why did you want to work with Jay-Z?
So I got lucky. Jay had a relationship, an existing relationship with Caliva, one of our targets, where they had a joint venture together and been working for the past 2 years on launching the brand Monogram. And so when we approached Caliva as a potential target for our SPAC, we sat down with Jay and his team and said that we'd like to acquire the other half of that joint venture and bring him on board as our chief visionary officer to build out, a house of brands as opposed to just a single brand, and work with, the entertainment powerhouse that he built, Roc Nation, to bring in other artists and athletes that have signed with Roc Nation to build additional brands under the direction of Jay at the top.
Yeah, so walk me through this a little bit. Caliva is a direct-to-consumer brand. I assume it delivers cannabis to folks. And I have to imagine I've got some questions about that business model as well, because that seems like it could be complicated given the federal status, marijuana, cannabis still being illegal federally, but legal in some states like California. But also, if you could talk to me about that expansion model, what you were just talking about in terms of Caliva providing the opportunity for other folks in the Roc Nation roster to kind of expand what they do and put their footprint in this e-commerce space.
Sure. So both Caliva and Left Coast were vertically integrated players. Caliva has its own delivery platform and retail footprint, which we'll continue to use. GoCaliva.com as we expand that sort of direct-to-consumer platform. We'll do that through the Caliva platform. And then both companies had a number of brands associated with them. On the Left Coast side, they have brands like Marley Natural and others. And on the Caliva side, it was Caliva, Deli Nichols, and some others as well, and Monogram, which was launched. And so, from a collection perspective, there's a dozen or so brands. We'll continue to build out that brand portfolio with Jay-Z, Monogram being the first one, and then we will build additional brands under that relationship, as well as bring on other artists and athletes to build net new brands and distribute those brands through the Caliva platform, through its retail and through its direct-to-consumer platform as well.
Yeah, and
so that's the objective.
Tell me a little bit about the Monogram brand and some of these other brands that are already out there, and how maybe some of those will be replicated or how those will be different in terms of the other brands, the new ones that you're thinking about bringing to market.
Yeah, so Monogram is a sort of a high-end luxury brand within the portfolio. It's a higher price point. It's beautiful packaging, and it's speaking to a consumer sort of similar to Jay's other platforms like Ace of Spades and Douce, like just a really high-end cannabis brand with beautiful packaging, high-end flower. really going after that sort of high-end consumer. But we have also, value brands within the portfolio that, speak to a larger swath of the population. And then we'll have some mid-market brands as well. And so currently, we sort of across the gamut have our value brands to our luxury brands. And as we bring on additional, rock talent and artists, they'll sort of situate within that, that arc from, value brand to luxury brand. But we'll have brands that speak to, all parts of the cannabis community, from value to luxury, from high THC to low THC, female-focused brands, brands focusing on sort of, young urban professionals. Across the gamut, we'll be looking at the various demographics. Cannabis is a product consumed by, adults across the spectrum, across class, across gender, and across race. And so we'll have brands that speak to all communities that want to participate in the legal consumption of cannabis.
And yeah, I think that's a really interesting space you all are trying to put yourselves in and go through. And I think it was very interesting as well that you went public through the SPAC, and it's a merger of a lot of what seemed like divergent people and ideas and business models. How does this all work together, though?
Yeah, so we have an integration, Herculean task over the next 90 days of integrating all of these different components.
Yeah. And wait, sorry,
We're
why is
also
it 90 days?
No, just meaning that, as a board, we've sort of given the sort of first 100 day, it's not 90 days, but like sort of the first 100 days of, making sure that the teams are working together, that we're integrating the parts, that, we're not duplicating certain aspects of the company, to really build out the most robust vertically integrated omni-channel platform in the state. And so that when we do launch new brands, it's seamless, interaction from seed to sale. So, whether it's the input on the flower or the distillate, to the manufacturing, the packaging, distribution through DTC or in retail. Particularly retail, the retail footprint will expand as, more and more of the population become vaccinated, and, retail becomes a better path for folks to acquire their cannabis. Right now, the delivery is, what's very popular in the state because of the lockdowns.
Right. No, I would be thinking though that you would want to, as Kaliva's part of this, direct to consumer e-commerce model, that you would be pushing more in that direction and away from retail. Why is retail still a big part of your plans?
So it's not a big part of our plan. It's just a part of our plan.
Just a
So
part,
there are
like a
still,
small part.
yeah, no retail. We have a retail footprint, but we're concentrating on expanding that D2C platform. It's Kaliva had a relationship with Ease. That relationship ended last year. They started to use their own platform, Go Kaliva, where half the products are branded products, half the products are third-party products, and we'll continue to expand, not only our reach, in terms of jurisdictions throughout California, but also expand the number of owned brands on the platform as well.
Gotcha. And I do want to make sure I say that, some of the folks who are expected to be a part of this in terms of, promoting and pushing it forward, some of these brands, Rihanna, Meek Mill, Yo Gotti, DJ Khaled, these are some of the biggest names in music. Is there a concern on the other side from, maybe some of their folks or some folks in your camp about this mix of these very mainstream artists and musical artists with a product like cannabis, which, still to some people, I think carries a stigma to it?
Yeah, so I think we're lucky because California is sort of the least stigmatized state in the union. It also happens to be the largest cannabis economy, not only in the United States, but in the world. And so being able to launch brands with artists, and we haven't announced any new artists other than Jay-Z. The artists that you mentioned are investors in the parent company, and we hope to, launch brands with
Yeah,
them,
I would just
over the coming
assume if
months
they're
and years.
investors, they know that their name on some products is going to
Yeah,
get more folks buying, and they're going to want to increase
100%.
that investment.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. And so we couldn't be more honored to have folks like Rihanna and Meek, and DJ Khaled, as investors in the parent company. And we're honored to be a fiduciary to their investment, particularly in this industry. And so, we do believe that, prohibition is essentially over. The legislators just need to catch up to where the American people are. And so we'll see the end of prohibition within, the next 12 to 24 months. Already, Senator Schumer has come out and said that Congress is working hard about merging various bills. And so we're going to see some action, in the Biden administration, in working with Congress over the next, two sessions, to finally sort of put the final nail in the coffin of prohibition.
How confident are you in that?
I'm 100% confident that prohibition of cannabis will end within the next 12 to 24 months, and that, over a period of 2 to 5 years, it will be regulated like alcohol and tobacco, with interstate commerce, and the ability to grow and manufacture, distribute, create brands, and be able to ship them across state lines. And so the way I see cannabis over the next decade is that, it will be cultivated in places like California, Nevada, and Arizona, and the brands will come from Southern California and New York, two jurisdictions that have, very robust historic cannabis economies. With, talking about the stigma, there is no stigma. So once it's legal, that's where the sort of the brand architecture and the brand awareness is going to come from. From the jurisdictions that sort of have a long history of cannabis consumption, creativity, consumerism around this product.
Mhm. Yeah,
So that's why we chose California,
yeah, and
as our key.
I do want to ask you about that because a lot of our conversation has been centered around California, where cannabis is legal. How much of your business plan is structured around this idea of legalization throughout the U.S.?
So it's not. So in the first instance, we're set to dominate and consolidate California, which is the largest economy in the world for cannabis in the single state, with the idea that eventually there will be the end of prohibition. We will be able to get our brands in the hands of consumers throughout the other 50 states. Um, you know, as we consider getting brands like Monogram and others into the hands of consumers in places like New York or Michigan or Illinois, we'll do that in an asset light approach where we'll partner with operators within the state, as opposed to build out duplicative infrastructure.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And can you talk to me a little bit about your social policies? And someone like Meek Mill, who's an investor, has been very outspoken on this issue of getting rights for folks who were locked up for possession, things like that. What are you guys doing on that front?
Sure. So I've personally been an activist my entire life, and when I approached Kaliva and Left Coast for the merger and spoke with Jay and Rock, I said that, as a requirement to do this transaction, I wanted to set aside $10 million in a social equity fund, where we start investing real equity in the communities that have been most harmed by the war on drugs and the prohibition of cannabis, by investing in entrepreneurs. So not just a charitable foundation, but actually providing real equity
And are
so
these
that,
are these entrepreneurs only in the cannabis space?
yeah, so entrepreneurs of color in the cannabis industry. And so, because people of color have been disproportionately targeted by law enforcement, and disproportionately punished and disproportionately affected in terms of their record and ability to get a fresh start. And have basically been either, from a regulatory perspective, told that they can't participate in the economy because if you have a former, drug conviction, you're not going to be able to involve yourself in cannabis, or just the structural racism in corporate America and the banking space, that have made it very difficult for entrepreneurs of color to enter the legal cannabis industry in the states. So, the objective for us is to rectify that with this fund, as a start in California, and we'll invest in entrepreneurs in other states that are in the cannabis industry as well. And every year we're going to set aside 2% of our net income, as part of the Robert Smith Challenge, to continue to invest in these communities, and bringing them into the legal cannabis economy. And also, if it's California focused and we're in California, we can provide them some infrastructure. So, help with banking, access to, flower input. If it's a social equity, license applicant that wants to open a dispensary in downtown Los Angeles, we can help stock their shelves with brands, provide them with our delivery platform, access to various inputs at preferred pricing, introductions to banking services. And so we plan to work with our in the companies and the entrepreneurs that we invest in, so that we can use the platform of the parent company to help scale their enterprise.
Okay. Michael, last question I want to ask you is just about your M&A strategy. Obviously, you've put together a pretty impressive hodgepodge of different people from different industries as part of this new company that now is the parent company that's publicly traded. What's your M&A strategy? How aggressive do you plan to be? And in this cannabis space, I mean, how do you plan to further differentiate yourself so that shareholders can be rewarded?
Yeah, so we're the only California pure play currently traded in the public markets, and so that's number one.
But as you said,
There,
as prohibition ends, I expect that to change.
100%. So, I think that the current MSOs like the limited license states because it's much easier to, make those margins, to be in a state where they're not giving away licenses, or it's the barrier to entry to operate in a place like Illinois or Florida, is very high, where that doesn't exist in California. The cannabis economy sort of post prohibition is going to look a lot more like California than it looks like Florida. And so California is really the place where we want to concentrate. And there are a number of, cultivators, D2C platforms, brands, manufacturers in the state, that we'll be eyeing, to acquire, over the coming months, to integrate into the parent company.
Okay. Any names you want to give me?
No, so unfortunately, from a regulatory perspective, we're sort of in a cooling off period. I think we need to sort of stay mum about M&A strategy for at least 30 days, from the closing. So sometime toward the end of February, we'll be able to be more vocal on the types of, transactions that we're planning on doing.
Okay, and you're going to do it right here, right on Voices of Wall Street. That's where you're going to tell the
You
people.
got it. Once we have something, I will make sure that we give you a call, and I'll be right there with
All right. And what about that new Rihanna brand? What can you tell me about the Rihanna brand that's coming out? Mike? Come on, give me that.
you. So all I can say is that I would love nothing more than to launch a Rihanna brand. You can ask people that know me. I've been trying to figure out how to launch something with Rihanna, since I started investing in cannabis in
Is
2013.
that what it's all been about? You did this whole thing.
I did this whole thing for Rihanna. So when I found out that she was, going to invest in the parent company directly, I mean, it was a super exciting moment for me professionally, given that she's such an outspoken, advocate for not only cannabis but to ending the war on drugs and the end of prohibition, and talking about the effects that the war on drugs has had on communities of color. And so who better to be an advocate to the end of prohibition, and the consumption of a legal product for adults than Rihanna.
Okay. All right, Michael, any other news you want to share with us? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything else that the people need to know about the parent company we haven't talked about?
No, just that it's early days. We closed a couple of weeks ago. We're in integration mode now, and we're really excited about what the future holds for us. And we've got a very strong balance sheet. We had $381 million left, in trust on closing. We've got no debt. And we plan to dominate and consolidate the market and be really the most, aggressive and profitable player in the industry, in the coming years.